name is LoeyLane, and I'm so excited to tell you guys about my new podcast, Internet Urban Legends, with my BFF Snitchery.
We deep dive into the darkest corners of the internet to uncover whether some of the most notorious web myths are hoax or whether they're con. Internet Urban Legends, available exclusively on Spotify.
Hello, my loves. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you are new here. Hi, hello. My name is Loey. It's been a while since I've taken a trip down memory lane on a bit of a nostalgic kick to find more conspiracy theories to absolutely wreck your childhood. I don't know what it is that is so fun about reapproaching old media that we consumed when we were younger and finding that maybe there's something a little spooky under the surface, but it's an entirely addicting feeling. I really don't know how you would even put a name on it, and yet it is my favorite thing to do. It's the same reason why we love like the lost episode creepypastas or haunted video game cartridges. It's fun to take something that feels really familiar to us, but also learn something that could be lurking beneath the surface. Before we get into today's video, we do have a sponsor. I filmed it the other day without pink hair, so let's get into that. Before we get into the story, I wanted to say a huge thank you to the sponsor of today's video, ThredUp. If you're unfamiliar, ThredUp is an online thrift shop and consignment store dedicated to bettering your closet, wallet, and the earth all at the same time. So full disclaimer, I'm not someone who realistically goes successfully thrift shopping in person very often. Being in a plus size body often means that my size is really hard to find, if not entirely impossible, and that's what I love about ThredUp. You can sort on their site by size, so you can input the sizes that frequently fit you and only see those pieces. So it's not like going into a thrift store and seeing all of the extra small shirts that I can't put on, or if you are that size, seeing, you know, other things that you couldn't wear. The first thing is the top that I'm currently wearing. It's a t-shirt with this little flutter sleeve. This is from the brand Rosin Alley and came with the tags still on it. I just tucked that into this blue floral skirt that I have on from Lauren by Ralph Lauren. To pair with those, I found this Kate Spade vintage bag. I love the style of this little crossbody. Another find with the tag still on is this BP long sleeve like navy t-shirt, and I'm styling that with this polka dot skirt from Forever 21, again with the tags still on. If you want to give ThredUp a try, you can do so by using my code LOEY30 at checkout to get 30% off of your first order, as well as free shipping. Once again, that is code LOEY30 on ThredUp to get 30% off as well as free shipping. Thank you to ThredUp for sponsoring today's video, and now let's get into the story. And we're back, and I am so excited to tell you today about the 5 disturbing childhood ruining conspiracy theories that I found. This all sparked, by the way, one day when my best friend Eleanor Snitchery and I were on our way home from recording our podcast. We were just kind of like stuck in creepy chit chat mode. In case you're unfamiliar, our podcast is called Internet Urban Legends and it's available exclusively on Spotify if you ever want to give it a listen. But she asked me basically if I had ever heard about the reason why Barney was canceled, if I'd ever heard this rumor when I was younger. And I was like, no.
Tell me the tea.
And she said, yeah, it was this rumor that was spread around my school that Barney, the guy who was inside of the Barney costume, stashed a bunch of drugs in the dinosaur's tail, and that's why the entire show was kicked off. And also, he would like curse out children, and he was just a really bad person, whoever was inside of this Barney suit. And I had never heard this before, so I gave it a Google, and this is like a thing. This is the first conspiracy theory, the reason why Barney was canceled. This rumor spread really far and wide, and I'm kind of impressed by its reach. Barney and Friends originally aired in 1992 and was inevitably canceled in 2009 despite having really great ratings. Ultimately though, having a nearly 20-year run is no easy feat and is a huge deal for any show. But people were confused. Barney was our childhood icon of the 90s and early 2000s, so why was it so abruptly canceled? Well, the rumor goes that the nameless actor inside of Barney's costume was a drug addict and was constantly showing up in the purple dinosaur uniform, costume, whatever, just obliterated on a daily basis. And this resulted in a lot of things. It apparently resulted in one episode that was never aired because Barney cursed out a child, but it also resulted in Barney getting caught with a ton of drugs in his tail. And this just spread and spread and spread, and so many people believed it. So not only do we have Barney being canceled over supposed drugs in the suit, I keep thinking of Barney as like a furry, so I keep wanting to call it a fursuit, but I guess it's like a dino suit. But then you have this lost episode that never aired because Barney was cursing out children. Neither of these theories has any weight to it. I think it was just young kids trying to fill in the gap as to why this show was so abruptly canceled. However, if that was it, I don't even know if I would put it in this list of conspiracy theories. But there have been some kind of interesting headlines, I guess, about Barney specifically and drugs that may have been the reason why people were so confused. Namely, that in 1998, drug-sniffing dogs caught a Barney toy that was being shipped across the country that was packed to the brim with cocaine, just packed to the brim with drugs. And officers, you know, they could have disposed of the dinosaur, they could have done a myriad of things, but they decided to follow the package to its intended destination, and they made 3 arrests, basically. I just think that was so funny. Like, imagine the Barney toy shows up at your front doorstep, but you pick up the box and you're like, heck yeah, my Barney toy is here. And then these cops just show up and arrest you. I thought it was kind of funny. So that resulted in a bunch of arrests. And then in 2004, weirdly, there was another drug-related incident with another Barney toy. And I guess that this happened when police went into a house on some kind of wellness check in a home that had at least 5 children. So seeing a Barney toy was not necessarily very out of the realm of possibilities. However, the Barney toy that the police found in this home contained $2,000+ in cash that apparently linked back to some kind of drug-related business. They made a bunch of arrests, and that was that. I guess I just thought that was interesting because, like, I feel like some child misread that headline, one of those headlines, and was like, oh, Barney was canceled. This is why Barney was canceled. And granted, those had happened years before the show was canceled, but I feel like that's where it had to have come from. However, this is not the only time that supposed drugs have been the reason for a show changing or ending. All of you probably remember that Steve from Blue's Clues was rumored to have been like super hooked on drugs, and that's why he was kicked off and replaced with Joe, I think it was his cousin or something in the canon of Blue's Clues. So Steve is kicked off the show for this drug addiction in like early 2000, and then he subsequently dies of a heroin overdose, none of which actually happened. So this is not the first time that drugs have been like, I think, the easiest, most, maybe even probable in some cases, way to blame something going wrong in Hollywood on, you know? This next one is a doozy, and this does not relate to like anything real world like Barney did. These are kind of a mix of, you know, things that we can look at in the tangible real world, like Barney having drugs in his tail, but also theories about the media itself. And this theory states that the entirety of Finding Nemo was all in Marlin's head. In case you were curious, and I know you didn't ask, but just so you know, my top 5 favorite movies of all time are Casablanca, Howl's Moving Castle, Knives Out, phenomenal film, probably The Sound of Music, and then Finding Nemo. So when I read this theory, I was like, I have to understand why there could be anything creepy about my favorite childhood movie. And of course, the entirety of Finding Nemo in Marlin's head, it goes back to the classic, everything was just a dream and everyone was really dead and we haven't heard that name in years. That is such an easy theory to come up with for different pieces of media, because you literally just say one character was asleep the whole time and then make up a myriad of reasons why nobody else is real. So it happens all the time, especially with children's media, but this one has something a little bit extra to it, in the capacity that I think that it's actually kind of impossible to disprove. I'm going to be spoiling the beginning of Finding Nemo the movie, just so you know, so if you haven't watched it, go ahead and click off. But in the beginning of the film, it shows that Marlin's wife and basically their entire nest, I guess, do fish have nests, of eggs marlins were all eaten and destroyed by a barracuda, and the only survivors were Marlin and one tiny, lone, very disfigured egg that he named Nemo. This theory states that Marlin was the sole survivor of the attack and that Nemo never made it to hatching from his egg. So the entire film, his chase to find his son who disappeared and ran away from him, was never real. It was all in Marlin's head. He finds a friend in Dory, though, who, through her short-term memory loss, teaches him to live every single day as if it's brand new. Basically, this suggests that the entirety of Finding Nemo was all like a coping mechanism for Marlin to deal with his trauma. So through Dory, he learns that he should, try to live every single day with no regrets, and each day is a new opportunity to start over. There are other lessons to be learned as well, like through Bruce the shark, who teaches Marlin that even things that can be perceived as threats can be non-threatening. So he can't constantly beat himself up over not knowing that this was going to happen, and he can't live out his days in fear. Basically, he can't micromanage to make sure that everyone around him is safe all the time. And then the sea turtles on the Eastern Australia current teach him to relax, go with the flow, and let go of his worries and anxieties. At the end of the film, Marlin hugs Nemo and tells him to go have an adventure. And according to this theory, this is him letting go of Nemo and saying, I can't hold on to this delusion anymore. Goodbye. As he sends his son off to school, he's actually just saying goodbye to Nemo, who was entirely in his head. And I know what you're thinking. A massive hole lies in this theory in the aspect that Nemo is seen away from Marlin for most of the film, in a fish tank, in a dentist's office, and going on different adventures and stuff. And this theory says that Marlin used that to fill in the gaps himself. Like, he had to have a reason for why Nemo was gone. And since the movie starts off in Marlin's point of view, I guess, it says that it just stayed in his point of view and everything we saw was all a figment of his imagination. Woo! It's an interesting theory, and I love anything that kind of makes me revisit and critically give another look at a piece of media that I really enjoy, especially because they drained the Finding Nemo ride at Disneyland. I feel like I'm one of 5 people who really loved that ride. My friends don't like going on it with me, or didn't, I guess, now that it's gone, because it would make them feel claustrophobic and they didn't like being under the water, but I loved it. But perhaps the public caught on to the secret and that's why they took it down. Or maybe Finding Nemo is just a story about a father and son and this is just a theory. Number 3 is really interesting, and that is the theory that the Flintstones is not set in the past, but a post-apocalyptic future. The entirety of this theory comes from one crossover episode that came out in 1987. If you are too young for this, my little Gen Z babies who may not be familiar with the Flintstones or the Jetsons, let me paint a bit of a picture for you. The Flintstones was this prehistoric, caveman family who lived with dinosaurs and had very limited technology. And the Jetsons, in their show, Meet the Jetsons, they were in space, basically. In this very futuristic society, they had a flying car, and it's just very clear they're in the future. This theory suggests that in the crossover episode, Elroy, as he was trying to build a time machine to take him and his family to the future, it didn't work in this crossover episode, and it accidentally sent them to the past, and that's where they met the Flintstones. But this theory suggests that it didn't actually malfunction the way that Elroy thought it did. In fact, it sent them to the future, a post-apocalyptic future at that. This theory says that there has to be a reason why the Jetsons live in this futuristic chrome world where they're flying above the earth. In the future, we had to leave the earth as we knew it because we screwed it up too much, which honestly probably is going to happen eventually. Terrifying to consider. Maybe the Jetsons live in space, in the sky. Maybe their entire society is above the earth because of a nuclear thing or something that happened down below. Maybe the earth is just trashed as we knew it. And the Flintstones are among the first humans on this land. I'm gonna read this directly from the article that I found basically looking into this theory because I feel like this is the easiest way to explain it. They also end up using animals to drive technology. From pig garbage disposals to birds playing records, they're attempting to rebuild what they once had using whatever is around. They even had a modern banking system. And why would they be celebrating Christmas in prehistoric times? This episode is really all that backs this up, along with the fact that the Flintstones do have technology. They have TVs made out of dinosaurs, dinosaurs, and a lot of their technological advances include dinosaurs. So in this theory, there was basically another Big Bang. The Earth resets itself, and when the dinosaurs come back, there are a few lone humans who also come back to Earth from their space society or whatever, and this is when they decide to tame dinosaurs or clone them or do something, and this is just them starting over, starting from caveman and working their way back up. It's interesting, and the more I thought about it, the more I kind of like it. It's not even that I believe it, I just sort of like this theory. Like some kind of catastrophic event leading to dinosaurs wandering the earth, cavemen, and the world starting over all over again. Number 4, and before I get into this, I want to quickly say that this is a quick little trigger warning that I'm going to be discussing a few different mental health disorders, illnesses, conditions, just stuff like that. So if that's not something that you feel like you can hear right now, I'll put a little timestamp. But this 4th one is kind of wild, and it's the theory that Winnie the Pooh and all of his friends are struggling with different mental illnesses, conditions, and disorders. These all reflect in their personality traits. When I read this, I was like, ah, haha, that's kind of funny, I guess. Like, relatable, me too, Pooh. But somewhat alarmingly, this has been backed up by an article in the Canadian Medical Association journal, which suggests that Pooh and friends would be better off with medication and parental supervision, rather than adventures all through the 100-acre woods. I also just want to say, before we get into this, I myself am diagnosed with depression and PTSD, but also, like, I have mental illness that runs in my family as well. I'm very used to talking about it. I talk about it quite openly. So this really was just like kind of funny to me looking into it. I don't take this theory that seriously. And by no accounts am I saying that I think that Winnie the Pooh and friends are representative of mental illnesses or disorders or anything like that. But nothing says childhood ruining conspiracy theory like analyzing the psyche of your favorite childhood cartoon characters. Piglet, who is constantly anxious, so very relatable in 2022, has general anxiety disorder. Owl is apparently dyslexic, but I think that OCD makes more sense for Owl personally. Just me though, I think Owl likes things a very certain kind of way, so if he was going to represent anything, I feel like it would be OCD. But our old buddy Tigger has ADHD. Winnie the Pooh himself has OCD and ADHD due to his ability to constantly kind of wander off, as well as kind of a repetitive counting habit that he has. And Christopher Robin himself supposedly has schizophrenia, and the entirety of what's happening in Winnie the Pooh is made up in his mind, and there is no 100-acre woods, and it's all just in his head. And that's not really how schizophrenia works. I also want to say that this just really got to me, and I kind of couldn't stop looking into this theory because I was kind of like very taken aback, because I think that saying that cartoon characters are representative of different mental illnesses is kind of a big claim. But the medical journal, like the Canadian Medical Association journal that I found, doesn't actually say that Christopher Robin has schizophrenia. They just say that he struggles with a lack of parental supervision and probably would benefit from going to therapy because he's clearly like just talking to animals in the woods. But they don't say anything about schizophrenia. It's the article that I found that says that he did. So thinking a little bit extra about that one over there on Digital Spy where I found this. Anyway, characters in the universe are all just Christopher Robin apparently trying to work out his own struggles. I think it's just so much more simple than that, but it's still, I guess, interesting. I just love the idea of a chunky little bear in the woods talking about how much he loves his honey and taking a nap. So I don't think that I'm going to believe this theory, but let me know what you think of this one. I think that this is by far the most controversial one that I'll talk about in this video. And again, like, you know, I don't believe it, but I'm just curious to hear what you have to say. And number 5 is that Teletubbies live in a utopia. This one isn't so much a theory though. Teletubbies very clearly live in like a perfect world. When the sun rises, it is a Gerber baby with a gigantic smile on its face, and they have a talking vacuum cleaner. There's not a lot of conflict in the Teletubby universe. However, a lot of controversy was spread after a 2015 episode of Teletubbies called Babies, that was just the title, where people started to question a bit about the Teletubby universe. Basically, it's during this episode that we learned that Teletubbies can and have had children. And they are introduced in this episode, and they are called, brace yourself for it, Teletubbies. I cannot emphasize to you enough after most of you have probably seen my Teletubbies fact videos where I covered like an ARG on Twitter that was about Teletubbies. I cannot begin to express to you the joy that it brings me to be able to say Teletubbies again. Anyway, back to the Teletubbies. Teletubbies have their own dedicated room, I guess, in the Teletubby household. They are raised by machines, always in a state of happiness, and fall asleep on command in their incubators. Now, according to the Teletubby website, yes, I had to go to the Teletubby website, they are 8 smaller Teletubbies that live with the Teletubbies in their own special part of the home dome. Now, a rep from BuzzFeed who covered this article requested comment from Teletubbies, and the Teletubbies spokesperson said that the Teletubbies just play like an older sibling role for the Tiddlytubbies. They help look out for them under the guidance of the voice trumpets. If you're like me and haven't watched Teletubbies in years, and I only watched it when I was watching my younger brother, I was a little bit too old for Teletubbies by the time that it came out. And anyway, if you haven't watched it in a really long time, voice trumpets resemble speakers, and they have both male and female human voices coming out of them. At the beginning of every single episode, they arise to say, "Time for Teletubbies," and it means that the show has begun. So to recap, Teletubbies live in a utopian world, have babies raised by machines who are always in a state of happiness, hooked up to incubators, and they fall asleep on command. No parents in sight, just the guidance of a voice trumpet that comes out of the ground and commands everyone to start their day. Why does this get creepier and creepier the more you look into it? There you have it, you guys. Those are 5 creepy conspiracy theories that will absolutely wreck your childhood. Thank you once again to ThredUp for sponsoring today's video. If you want to get 30% off of your first ThredUp order as well as free shipping, you can do so using my code Loey30. I want to thank my subscriber Lexi for being a member of this channel. If you ever want to join my channel memberships, get 1 extra members exclusive video every single month. It's usually going to be a little bit more personal, as well as helping me pick out videos for this channel and so many other member perks. You can do so by hitting the little join button. It should be somewhere around the screen. We would love to have you. For now, thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy, go ahead and give me a thumbs up, and please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I love you very, very much, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!